Good evening and welcome to Business Live. Today, we delve into the state of the economy. We look at the Monetary Policy Committee's report on what's been going on on the economic front, and also try to project ahead to the state of the economy, State of the Nation's address, which will be read on February 26. We also do our usual stock market analysis and bring you the headlines from the business world. I am Jahuyan. Now, we're going to start right off with the headlines from the business world. And the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Ghana has maintained the rate at which it lends to commercial banks at 21%. Also, the National Petroleum Authority says that petroleum products at the pump, prices of petroleum products at the pump will remain unchanged. They say they want to do this so that Ghanaians can continue to benefit from the low price of crude oil. These and many more stories coming up.
The current power crisis is likely to stabilize and improve from July this year. This is what Joy Business has picked up from persons working on the country's power generation and distribution sector. The engineers Joy Business spoke to are basing their prediction on some emergency power generators and ships that should be coming from April this year, as well as a new steam turbine generators that TICO is constructing, which should be connected within the next 3 months. The engineers also argue that they're expecting the water levels at Akosobo Dam to improve from July, as the rainy season should set in from June. They however blame the current situation of serious shortfall in the country's generation capacity and limited supply in power from neighboring Ivory Coast. Even though government was looking at purchasing some 18 megawatts, it's only getting about 20 megawatts. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank has maintained the rate at which it lends to commercial banks at 21%. This means if you are servicing or planning to service a bank loan at a non-fixed rate, you could expect the interest rate to stay the same, even though it does not really work out that way in practice. The MPC's decision follows a balanced outlook for inflation and growth in anticipation of an IMF program officials are certain will be signed off soon. The Bank of Ghana has downplayed criticism that government's borrowing is getting out of hand. There have been concerns that at the rate the debts are mounting, Ghana will be spending unsustainable amounts of its tax revenue to pay interest, leaving nothing for developmental projects. Figures released by the Central Bank at Wednesday's MPC News Conference meeting put the total debt at 76.1 billion Ghana cedis at the end of 2014, up from 51.9 billion Ghana cedis at the end of 2013. Government spending also amounted to 23.6% of GDP, slightly above outlay, or 23.2% of GDP for 2013. The Central Bank, however, says government cannot do away with borrowing, but will have to balance its budget. Prices of petroleum products at the pumps will be kept unchanged for at least the next 3 months, according to the National Petroleum Authority. This is one of the measures it is taking to ensure consumers benefit from the recent low price of crude oil. The NPA has so far resisted pressure to reduce prices at the pumps to reflect the global situation. But Chief Executive Moses Asaga tells Joy Business this is because the authority intends to hold pump prices so long as the world market price does not go beyond $70 a barrel. Moses Asaga says the price stability could even extend to 6 months if other factors also remain favorable. The Ghana franchise of American food outlet, KFC, has run into some serious trouble with the Ghana Tourism Authority regarding the payment of the tourism levy. A task force from the Tourism Authority, during a monitoring and enforcement tour, discovered that the franchise has not paid the levy for 2 years now. The 1% charge on hospitality services is meant to go into the Tourism Development Fund, but board chairman of the authority says most hotels and hospitality firms regrettably are not paying. The country's quest to secure an IMF program by April could be realized. Some of Ghana's development partners have expressed their commitment to assist government meet all the required conditions for the program to take off by the second quarter. The donors had earlier maintained they will not extend their support unless Ghana took drastic steps to address problems facing the economy. The IMF team negotiating with Ghana for a fund program is meanwhile expected in town tomorrow. Joy Business gathers that the team is likely to review the country's economic data for last year and finalize the negotiations.
Now, Ghana currently owes 76.1 billion Ghana cedis. Public debt, which is the total of external and domestic borrowing and interest payments, is now 67% of the total value of our economy. Now, government is desperately trying to secure an IMF deal. This deal is expected to be the catalyst that would instill fiscal discipline that the country so desperately needs. Today on Business Live, we are trying to put all the figures into context: inflation, interest rate, projected tax receipts. What does it mean for the ordinary Ghanaian business, and what does it mean for citizens? Well, joining me in studio for this discussion is Professor Newman Kojo-Kusi, who is the Chief Executive of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, and via phone is Dr. Charles Akar, an economist with the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research. Welcome to Business Live, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me start with you in studio, Professor. How would you describe the state of the Ghanaian economy today?
Well, as of now, the economy is facing a crisis, if I may say so, because we are experiencing declining economic growth. The macroeconomic instability, or the macroeconomic indicators, are heading downwards. We have fiscal consolidation is not getting on. We have debt that is going up, and those things. So this is serious things.
Yeah, an economy in crisis.
That's right.
Okay, Dr. Akar, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Dr.
Yes.
I'm not hearing anything.
Oh, okay. Professor Kusi, who is with the Institute for Fiscal Studies, is just giving us his description of the state of the economy right now. He says we are an economy in crisis. Do you concur?
Well, I wouldn't say we are in crisis, but we are not in good shape.
Mm-hmm. And the distinction is?
Yeah, crisis is a more extreme way of describing our current economy. But we are heading towards crisis unless something dramatic takes place in the next few months.
Okay, you say we are heading towards crisis. Let's just bring a bit of the figures in. When the MPC met and did their report last week, it was revealed that between November and February, public debt went up from 66 billion Ghana cedis to 76 billion Ghana cedis. That is 10 billion Ghana cedis that in debt accumulated over a 4-month period. And in your view, this is not a crisis situation?
Well, it depends on several things. I think the minister himself admits that the current levels of borrowing by government is quite unsustainable. But we are also aware of measures that they are putting in place to try to rein down on government expenditure. I think my worry is more of the efficiency of government spending. Though the government always shows that US and other countries borrow to finance infrastructure development. Yeah, so every country borrows. Mm-hmm. But when your debt to GDP is already, reaching 70%, 50%, things like that, then we get into a crisis situation. At the current levels, the unsustainable, but I would not say they have now much more fundamental problems with the economy than the debt situation.
Okay, Dr. Akar, just hold on a second. Professor Kusi, let me come to you. He's mentioned the fact that government say they're putting measures in place to sort of bring down spending and bring down borrowing in particular. A lot of analysts seem to take the view that it's not the debt per se, but it's our ability to pay. In light of the energy crisis that we have now, that has virtually brought certain sectors of the economy to a standstill, is our ability to pay under threat?
Well, yes and no. No, because if you look at the economic potential of the country, we've got the resources in all its manifestations. So it's a matter of how do we manage the resources in the medium to long term to be able to generate enough money to pay for the debt. So it comes a matter of managing the economy and the credibility with which we manage the economy. I also agree with that. It's not only about the debt. Of course, just looking at it within the 5 months period is not the issue. If you look at it from 2012, at the end of 2012, we were owing 34.6 billion. Mm-hmm. And as of December, it has gone up to 76.1 billion. So the debt has increased by 40 billion cedis in a matter of 2 years. Now the question is, what was the money used? If the money were used in activities that will create jobs, that will grow the economy and generate enough income for us in future to pay for the debt, then there's no problem. Because as the gentleman said, yes, even the United States and other countries, they borrow, to finance their growth. But the question is, what did we use the money for? Did we put it in activities that over time will generate employment, generate more money for us to be able to pay those that we owe? That is the issue. Okay,
we know that some of we don't have the full complement of what all the money has been spent on. Yeah. But over the years, we've had the Minister of Finance come to Parliament and give reports. They've talked about roads, they've talked about the energy sector, they've also talked about certain infrastructure, schools and so on and so forth that they are spending the monies on. Is this not satisfactory for the ordinary Ghanaian?
No, it's not. It's not. Because in the last 2 years, for instance, 2013, the government went to the Euro market and borrowed 1 billion. And just last September, it also borrowed 1 billion. If you look at the domestic borrowing, has gone up. An ordinary Ghanaian would like to know that this money that we borrowed, it went into this project, specific project. If you say it went to school, which schools are we talking about? If you say it went to support infrastructure, which infrastructure that we're talking about? Already we have an energy crisis, and energy or electricity affect every economic aspect in this country. And without solving the energy crisis, we're not going to have any growth. The manufacturing sector, which is collapsed, will not be resuscitated, and those type of things. So what we like to know is, look, this money that we bought, these are the specific projects or areas to which the money will put, and these are what we should expect from the money that we have invested in these areas. So the details are lacking.
The details are lacking.
Yes.
But in another area in which the details are lacking is the IMF deal that so much stock has been put into. We don't know how much government is seeking. We don't know exactly what the terms or frame of reference they have, even though they have indicated that they will want to work on the wage bill and so on and so forth. This IMF deal we've had dates shifting from January to February, and now we're expecting something to be closed out in March. What would happen if we do not secure this deal by the first quarter?
Well, let me just talk a little bit about the IMF deal and the delays. Mm-hmm. I have been in the process before. You see, the IMF definitely, given the wage bill and the hula-laba around the wage and the payroll management, those type of things, the IMF would definitely going to ask the government that they should reduce the wage bill by reducing the employment numbers. Mm-hmm. Okay, but we know in this country that government is the last employer. The government gives employment to the majority of people in the formal sector. So it is not a matter of just sucking people from the civil service or from the public sector. Government cannot do that because they are obligatory, to the legal implication about that. So in the immediate, term, government cannot do anything significant about the employment numbers. That's why some of us are saying that if that's the case, then why don't we clean the payroll? Because we know that there are some ghost names in the payroll. The payroll is not managed efficiently, and therefore clean it. At least we can have some savings out of that place. So I think that would be a thorny issue. Another thorny issue is how to be with the data and the information that they give to the IMF. In fact, I'm a researcher myself, and sometimes I find it very difficult to accept some of the data that are being published. For instance, we release our review on the 2015 budget and then we raise issues around the GDP figures, the revenue estimates, the inflation figures, and those type of things. So the IMF will want to see that the data that are provided to them are very credible. So again, that will lead to some sort of protracted. And then also, given the size of the debt, the IMF would like to place caps on the amount of concessional and non-concessional facility that we can contract, But we think that, like people think that, let us borrow, after all, we invest it and we pay. But that is not the issue. So there are quite a number of areas, that will require protracted and long discussion and those type of things. And then secondly, it's not only the money that the IMF will give to us. Of course, if we're able to receive say 1 billion or 500 million from the IMF, the cost of borrowing is very low, because it's purely concessional. It's going to support a balance of payment. But the fact that we've reached an agreement with the fund put our development partners at ease, because in their minds they think that we're working with a big brother, and so they were able to put, watch us and keep us to be in line and take all those difficult fiscal consolidation measures that we are unable to do on our own. All those things we put in place. So it opens another door for us, and the departments who giving us grants will be very happy to disburse the grants. And
yes, there's been a lot of silent anticipation, both from the domestic and the international markets, just waiting to see what this IMF deal would have, and we all expecting that this would also reflect on the kind of economic year we have in 2015. Yes. Is it too early to start talking about what if there's no deal?
Well, I think always when you are negotiating with the fund, you should have your plan B, so that in case your plan A does not fall through, there's something to fall back on it. So I'm not in there, but I hope the government has some plan B somewhere else that they will fall upon. I mean,
okay, let's move the question forward, the discussion forward a little bit. I still have Dr. Aka on the line. Dr. Aka, I have a quick question for you. What would be your short-term projection for this country? What do we expect to happen? We know that there's an election year. Okay, it looks as if I've lost Dr. Aka on the line. So I could pose it to you. Election year is looming. We know we have this economic cycle. Anytime there's an election year, budget deficit just widens into a black hole. What do we expect to happen? We've had a very difficult past 2 years. Next year, what are we expecting to see?
Well, I'm sure the government will try as much as possible to do what it can within its ability to be able to put things right. It's not lost yet. At least we have about a year or a year and a half for the election campaign to kick in and those type of things. And then also, Ghanaians would like to see, even if the problems are not all solved, Ghanaians would like to see that the government has put in place, or government is making an attempt, a credible attempt to deal with the figures. Come the election period, yes. No government will be in power and will try to work itself out. The government will try to find ways of, pleasing the majority of the people in order to sort of win the election. And that's why the issue of, for instance, reducing the size of the civil service or the public sector is very, very thorny. The mines, the issue of reducing subsidies, on the petroleum prices and those type of things, knowing the impact of that, on the poor and transportation and those things is also very, very thorny and things like that. So I'm sure it's not going to be easy without an IMF program. It's not going to be easy, but I think the government will desperately try to put some face, a strong face.
Okay. Thank you very much for making time for us on Business Live, Professor. So that was Professor Newman Kojo-Kusi, who is the Chief Executive of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. And earlier on the phone line, I had Dr. Charles Aka, who is an economist with the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research. When we come back, we're going over to the Ghana Stock Exchange to find out exactly how your stocks are faring. All in studio with me now is Bertha Atubiga. She is with Gold Coast Fund Management, and she's going to tell us exactly how the stock markets fared in the last week. Bertha, welcome to Business Live.
Thank you very much. I hope you're well.
I'm good, thank you. Quickly, it looks as if things are looking up.
Yes. Last week happened to be the best week since the opening on the stock market. And before I dive into what actually happened in the stock market, I just want investors to know that Saba Food Limited is a food and spicy company that has come out to issue, it has launched its initial IPO to raise 2.5 million Ghana cedis. This is to aid them expand and also acquire more equipment. And if this is successful, they'll end up listing on the Ghana alternative market. That is also another market to attract small and medium scale businesses.
Okay, so quickly, for the benefit
market.
of the viewers who don't know, an IPO is initial public offer of a share. That means that if you are looking to buy into a new company who is now listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange, look for, well, she says Saba Foods, and that's on the alternative stock market, which has a different criteria from what we have on the main Ghana Stock Exchange.
Yeah. So quickly, let me just take you through what happened last week. As I said, last week was a very good week for investors in the stock market. We saw both the composite index and the financial stock index adding up 0.41% each to their week open average returns to close at with the composite index now clocking an average return of negative 4.54% from a week open of negative 4.95%. And then the financial stock index, which looks at the financial equities on the stock market, reduced its year-to-date return from negative 5.10% to negative 4.68%, and this is quite impressive. We also realized that the volumes of shares traded on the stock market went down by negative 8, and it went down by about 8.3 million Ghana cedis, and that over 8.3 million, that doesn't mean that the stock market was not very liquid. But when you compare this to the past 2 weeks, you realize that the market was very liquid. Just that last week we saw, we had a negotiated trade that was with Gore. So it increased the total volumes of shares trading on the stock market. We also saw the value of the shares traded also reducing by 6.8 million. And as I said, it is a good trade because since year open, we have not really experienced something like this on from the beginning of the year on the stock market. And when you look at the value of the exchange, that is how much the Ghana Stock Exchange is worth now, you realize that it has gone up by 50.63 million Ghana cedis to close at 63,454.62 million Ghana cedis. And that is also a positive note as well. So the Ghana Stock Exchange really did very well last week, and I know investors will be looking out, as we were expecting a positive turn on the stock market, and that is what really happened on the Ghana Stock Exchange last week.
Okay, so this time I'm going to flip it around. Usually look at the gainers, then we look at the losers. Let's look at the losers first, and then we look at the gainers. Okay, gainers is up already. I think my producer wants us to go with the script. So let's go with the script. So we have the gainers up there.
Yes, as I said, this week also we recorded more equities gaining as compared to the losers. We saw 6 equities gaining on the stock market, and then BOPP, CPC, EBG, Ghana Commercial Bank, and Standard Chartered Bank, SIC as well, which for the past days, or let me say for the past weeks on the stock market, has been losing consistently on its price. But last week happened to be a positive week for SIC. As
I think that is quite remarkable, because I think the acting
and it didn't even add just a peso or 2 pesos, but it added 6 pesos. That's 40% of its week open price to close at 21 pesos per unit share. We also saw EBG, Ghana Commercial Bank, and then we saw these equities also adding 1.40% and 0.99% to their week open prices.
And my favorite, CPC.
Yes, CPC.
It's up by 100%.
Yes, but you know, it wouldn't surprise you that it might drop a peso, but we're hoping that the equity moves from this 1 peso gain,
2 peso,
to maybe 2 peso gain, or maybe 3 pesos or more. But it has had this trend for quite some time now. Yes, and then when you look at as I said, EBG and Ghana Commercial Bank, when you look at the stock market, as at the close of trade today, these equities added, Ghana Commercial Bank added 3 pesos, so currently it is trading at 5 Ghana cedis, 14 pesos, and then EBG is now trading, SIC again added 3 pesos today on the stock market at the close of trade at 3 o'clock, and it's now trading at 0.21 Ghana cedis. That's 24 pesos per unit share.
I think SIC is a very good example on exactly how the stock market works, because 3-4 weeks ago, if you're an investor, you'd have been making so much losses.
And you know, if you had invested at that time on the stock market, it means you have had your capital has appreciated, and you've had more gains on your investments now. So that is why we always tell investors that when the prices of equities are falling or are going down, you take advantage of that particular moment or that period and then invest on the stock market. You make good returns in the long term, and sometimes even in the short to medium term, you can make really good returns on your investment.
And the losers market was quite small.
Yes, we had only 3 equities losing on the stock market last week, and that was just Cal lost 2 pesos, and then Unilever and UT Bank. Not surprising, because since last year, from 2014, these 2 particular equities have not been doing so well on the stock market. I think management will have to come in and put in strategic measures to be able to for it to reflect in the prices or to attract more investors into these commodities. And aside that, when you look at Unilever happens to be a manufacturing equity. And now that we are into energy crisis, let's say if they don't have any standby source of power or energy for their productions, it means that it is going to affect the the equity and the company as a whole this year as well, looking at the crisis that we find ourselves in. And we have the cedi. If the cedi, you know, today, what happens when the cedi continues to depreciate, as we are seeing, especially to the dollar, it will also affect manufacturing industries and equities as well. And all these things, for instance, let's say today the dollar, the cedi depreciated again to the dollar and is now trading around 3.4. If we should continue for some time, then it means that it is going to really have a great negative impact on manufacturing equities, except you have standby power, you have plan B, as our first guest said. It is always good to have plan B, so that when the crisis come in or when the problems come in, you don't stand a chance of losing so much.
You have a buffer to the shocks. Let's quickly go into the projection for this week. Do we expect the turnaround to continue?
Yes, this week we're looking at equities such as Ghana Commercial Bank and EBG to add up to investors, if possible. SIC, today has been a good day for SIC. It added 3 pesos again. And I said EBG because for the past 15 trading days on the stock market, it has been a consistent gainer on the stock market, and as well Ghana Commercial Bank too. So this week we're looking at these equities adding up. And BOPP, our listed BOPP is one of the equities that is doing well on the stock market. And it has returned, I think, 2.44% so far year to date to investors on the stock market. Aluwex is also doing well. It has returned, I think, 50%. That's the highest so far. SOGGA, the French bank, is still maintaining its year to date return at 6%.
So many options out there for investors.
So they should seek the right investment analysts to show them and to guide them in choosing the right portfolio. Yes.
Bertha, thank you very much for your analysis there. It's the bounce back of the financial stocks, as we can see. Bertha Atubiga is with Gold Coast Fund Management, and she's here every Monday to give us analysis on the Ghana Stock Exchange. That's all we have time for on Business Live. However, coming up in half an hour, we're going to find out what's going to happen to the teachers of those pupils who joined the Wombo demonstration last Wednesday.